This is my bass recording for the definition of I. First, we've got an EQ that's just sort of it's on E bass. What it's doing is it's basically boosting the low frequencies here, but sort of cutting um, the super low frequencies that sort of kind of create sort of a low rumble that kind of muddy the track up. Um, and then it's sort of increasing here, sort of around the higher end where the attack of the bass, sort of a bit of the harmonics will be, sort of things like that, and then just sort of rolling off the really high end because that's not really needed, as the bass will primarily take up the lower end, and we don't need the bass to take up the higher end, as other instruments will do that. I've then got a compressor here, just sort of a bit of light compression, not too harsh. They just sort of add some depth to the bass and just sort of tightens it up and gives it a little boost. And then I've got a noise gate here, just sort of removing any unwanted frequencies, pops and clicks and sort of things like that. And we've got the bass amp. I've got the bass on started with a classic comp with the mic placement fairly central on the cone and fairly far out. Um, I've got I know it is slightly different to all my other tracks, which are using ever so slightly different setup, but the the actual amp is this bit is the same, so it's pretty similar. It's just the speaker and the microphone are ever so slightly different. I preferred this speaker. I preferred doing this for this track, partly because I liked the biggest speaker just gave a little bit more power for this, because this track is a bit more simple and things. I wanted the bass to have a bit more um, energy, and just to be a bit more sort of a bit more low end. So having this bigger speaker really pushes through the low end of the of the bass. Um, and then I've got an adaptive limiter on add density. What I liked about this is it really sort of lifts the bass up and kind of gives the bass a bit more character and a bit more power. It sounds like when you remove and take it away, when without the limiter, the bass just sort of sounds a bit thin and just a bit quiet, and like there's not really doesn't really have a lot. But adding the adaptive limiter just sort of gives the bass sort of a bit more power and a bit more bit more density. So it sounds like the bass is still actually there and a very driving force for the song. Then I've got two sub basses on actually. One is a kick warmer and the other is a bass booster. Now the kick warmer is there just to sort of add some warmth and sort of to connect it up to the drums and the kick as well, just so that the bass and the kick can really sort of mold together and create a good framework for the track. 'Cause for this song, a lot of it is sort of bass and drums, while the piano, there's no guitar like during the verses, and the piano's just playing quite simple things. And then the singer is sort of the vocal is sort of the main thing. So I really need the bass and the drums to really connect together. And then the bass booster is sort of just really boosting up the bass. And because of the EQ, you're boosting a lot of mainly around 50 to 100 hertz kind of area, and not so much this, so the bass gets boosted while it doesn't get muddied up or anything, which is good. And then we've got a second bass with a fat FX on it. It's sort of a dirty wobble, and what it kind of does is it adds sort of a slight like wobble, wobble kind of a feel. It's, slight electronic, but it's not something that you'd really notice unless you listen to the bass on its own. But I think it sort of adds just a bit of character to the bass, and I think it adds a bit of character and a bit of texture. And I think it's quite nice, and it makes the bass just sound a little bit more interesting, and it adds to the bass and really adds a bit more low end and makes the bass just sound nice and gives the bass more character in the track, and I think it lifts the bass up a little bit, which I think is good. And that's sort of what I've done for the bass guitar.